only want 10 to 12 minutes of, like risk-based content, so.
Whenever you guys are ready to start.
Okay, so I'll do an intro, we'll do a pause, and then I'll do the intro for the segment. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone to this edition of Manpower Group's Workforce Intelligence Labs podcast. With me today is Dean Carter, the Chief Experience Officer for Modern Executive Solutions. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's great to be here.
Dean, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. I'll tell you about my professional self. We'll keep it at that. Although my daughter got married last Saturday. So
I think the audience needs to hear just a little bit about that in your intro.
Okay. My daughter got married. We got married in Santa Barbara. I met her when she was 2, and I was the officiant. So I wanted to make sure to respect the roles that her mother and father had, but I got to be the officiant, which was pretty cool. And I did good up until the vows.
I was just going to ask, when did the tears start?
The big choke moment when I, Grace, and I couldn't get the rest of that out. It took me a moment to collect myself, and then we got through it. They actually did say their vows.
Every wonderful moment requires a pause.
It did, and then I felt like the whole audience breathing, waiting.
Yes.
And, they were waiting for the choke, and that's when it happened.
That's when it happens.
Yeah.
That's always how it happens. That's by far the most interesting story, right? Here is just all about the rootedness of family and connections.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I know that's partly what connects you in from an HR discipline perspective. So tell us a little bit about your history there.
Yeah, it's not like she's in HR also.
Oh,
So we have an
apple does
connection
not
there.
fall far from the tree. Okay.
So I've been a head of HR for almost a quarter of a century.
Wow.
I started my career in Fossil, actually, as the head of HR. I started in provision in HR. It was with Pier 1, kind of in specialist roles. And then fell into the head of HR job at a really young age at Fossil. And that was when we convinced everyone to buy a watch in a tin can. And
Yes,
it was
I remember that.
And then,
I had one of
It
those.
was a glorious job, and for reasons to get closer to Grace, who lived near Chicago at the time of her mom, I left and we moved to Chicago, and I was head of HR for Sears for another 5 years until she graduated. And then the goal was to get back to California, and I stumbled upon the job for the head of HR for Patagonia. That was a unique role because when I was offered the job, it was head of HR with finance and general counsel also reporting to me.
Wow.
Now, though the jobs with Fossil were transformational, the Sears job was wildly transformational in terms of just leaning into data, because the biggest challenge about the company was being big, and how do you take what's the challenge into a gift? And so it became the gift of just data, and I don't think through that. But the biggest gift I got was being head of HR from Patagonia, and that's when a lot of things shifted about how I thought we were thinking about HR, and it came this moment. I like to, even at Sears and Fossil, I like to mirror our HR practices to follow the language of the business, or use the culture to feel the same, or our models. Even the model of HR is similar at Fossil or to Sears, as has the business approach. So Patagonia, we started to adjust some of the things. For example, instead of job grades, we used climbing grades.
Oh.
And so they were listed in elevation.
I feel the vertigo starting to set in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just how to, be culturally relevant. But the biggest change happened when we shifted our purpose, which was, when I got there, was build the best product, do no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire solutions to the environmental crisis.
Yeah, that sounds like a great
It's a
great list.
Purpose. We had that for 40 years. Then the purpose shifted, the founder shifted it, kind of surprise to us, as an announcement on NPR, we're in business to save our home planet.
Wow, that's like the mother of all vision statements,
We're
Dean.
in business to save our home planet.
Wow.
So that we really be able to think differently about how do we damage the planet less, and how do we actually save it.
Yes.
That's a very different concept. So we had to shift the entire business model. Yvonne may have started talking about, do we still continue to be the company we are now, who are going to be 100 years from now? And landed on the one industry that could actually reverse climate change and not just stop it or do it or kill it slower is agriculture. And the way agriculture works, I'm not going to go through the whole process, but if we move from traditional to regenerative agriculture, then, which is the concept of putting more into the soil than we extract, we could actually not just stop climate change, we could reverse it within a decade. And by thinking about that, even though we're little starfish in the water, if we started to make change and convince more companies to lean in on regenerative practices, then maybe we could save the planet.
Yes.
So I began to think, wow, all the tools that I've been given as an HR professional that I've advocated for are highly extracted. The annual performance review is an extractive process. No one loves that.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure our entire audience adores the annual performance process.
Both
Yes.
the manager can't stand it and the employee can't stand
Right.
it. Matter of fact, there's a lot of
It's a lot of
research,
mutual insanity in participating in this every cycle.
A lot of time,
Yes.
like white knuckles that you endure it. And there's a lot of research that says actually there's some level of we shut down after the process because it's so stressful. And then it hit me also about the annual engagement survey, which was a lot of questions designed to how much discretionary effort we can convince people to do.
Right.
And so these two concepts of, how much do we extract during the year, and also how much do we, how much discretionary effort can they get them to volunteer give, those concepts weren't in line with saving the whole planet.
Right. Right.
So how did I think about, wow, what if we lean into a concept of regenerative practice for human resources? What if, as a result of working for a company, you have a better life, you have a better relationship with your spouse, more time with your children, you have more time to do things you love, and by the way, you're a heck of a lot more productive.
Wow,
You come to work,
yes.
Going up the stairs 2 steps at a time. How do you do that? And that's what we move forward to.
It feels like there's a really interesting link here, right? The regenerative agriculture and the regenerative corporate culture. So explain for our audience how that looks in practical purposes.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole concept of work to some extent is a transactional relationship that we've had for several years. I pay you, you do work, you go back and at some point you leave and you go away. So it's not like I'm invested in your long-term future or health because ultimately you're going to work somewhere else, or there's the current situation about work. What I began to think about a culture that thinks about every single day, how do you make sure that this is a regenerative, restorative, sustainable experience? Here's what I began to think about. What if I employed these employees for the rest of their lives? What if not only did I employ these employees, what if I employed their children too?
It's like the ultimate closed loop you're describing here, yes.
So, but the reason I thought about this is because it happened in Patagonia.
Okay.
So Patagonia had on-site childcare, and there were children raised at Patagonia in on-site childcare who became executive leaders at Patagonia.
Wow.
So it's the ultimate succession plan. You start in diapers. So if you knew that, like the children of your employees were going to be your employees someday, how would you think differently about childcare? How would you think differently about the benefits that you offer? How would you think about how would you think about lots of things? So we started to shift our policies, our programs. We experimented with even the engagement survey questions. We certainly asked about productivity and what, intent to stay. But then we asked questions like, as a result of this program of working at Patagonia, do you have a better relationship with your spouse? Do you have more time to spend with your children? Do you have more time to go to the doctor and dentist? Do you have time to buy healthy food? And after we got through these, we boiled it down to one single question that began to matter the most, which is, for what I put into my work, I believe that Patagonia gives back equal or greater value to my life.
The organization as additive to our lives versus the extraction that you were talking about before.
Extraction.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's very powerful.
there's a great book by Dr. Jeffrey Pepper, who's a professor at Stanford, and it's all about, he calls it dying for a paycheck. And we are literally creating mental and physical health because of the experiences people are having at work. There's actually a health crisis and a mental health crisis because of stress-induced illness from work. We're literally causing cancer and other illnesses because of this. You talk about people, I know people who had strokes in the office, or people who were so stressed out they had to leave for a break. How many times have you heard that?
Yes,
I just need to
yes.
leave for a break. Is that how we want to?
No.
It's
It's not a very resilient or adaptive kind of a structure, right?
No, it's not sustainable. And so when we know that ultimately, as time moves on, we're not going to have enough workers. We're not going to have enough skilled workers to do the jobs we need to do. We need to start treating the workforce not like a series of disposable, objects, but maybe a sustainable, regenerative group that we have a common reason to keep healthy and well and for the long term, not just like, okay, people aren't disposable.
No, they're not. In fact, you and I have talked about this before. One of my favorite things to say is talent is the ultimate renewable resource, but we put more care into plastic straws versus paper
Right.
straws than we do into people. Now, if we just connect this to our current state, where we know there's significant evolution of roles and skills, we've talked about the number of changes, the orders of magnitude hitting multiple sectors. So if I look at digital, I look at automation, I look at robotics, I look at sustainability, I look at AI. Before AI, by the way, just some fun numbers for you from the research Manpower Group has conducted with partners like MXD.
Yeah.
That's over 1,000. That's over 1,000. So that's a huge hurdle for organizations. Now we add in AI, the great unknown shift that's coming. We need that resilience and adaptability more than ever before. So the talent, as you pointed out, isn't going to just magically manifest. So we have to really shop from our own closets and build that talent. But a question I have for you is, even if we can get that right, are we providing the operating conditions for these individuals to be successful? Like, that model hasn't shifted organizationally in decades.
If you think about the org chart,
Mm-hmm.
what it looks like.
Oh, we love org charts about as much as we love performance appraisals, right?
Exactly. You think about like the level of structure is a box connected by a line to another box with a bunch of boxes underneath it with a much more. And sometimes we flip the org chart with like the other boxes on top. It's just
There's still boxes with
There's
lines,
still
yes.
boxes with lines.
No one is fooled.
And then when we do a reorg, then we have to go through all the boxes and understand how the boxes move. But this box is attached to that box. This box is bigger than that box, so it can't fit underneath that box. We've created a structure that was designed to make cars.
Yes.
Henry Ford was brilliant, and we made a lot of cars. But we don't work the same way we did that in assembly line before, and we're still using the structures of org charts and in a way which fit perfectly for that time, but don't fit for today. I think we were talking earlier today about a conversation about how work is changing and AI is changing, and that even the jobs are changing. It's not just like changing a year from now. Work and change are changing
Continuously
every 6 months. So I think the future organization looks more biological than organizational. Like it's more about the relationships between, not the structure of.
Yes.
And if you think about biostructures that have survived time, they're the ones that are adaptable. They're the ones that have little diversity in a species. It's the ones that didn't have diversity in species and didn't make it.
Right.
It's the ones who could migrate.
Yes, yes.
They weren't just in one place.
They were mobile, right, yes.
They were mobile, to a level of mobility. And so when the ones couldn't move, they were stuck in the situation, they evaporated.
Yes.
And I think we have to think about our organizations like this. How agile and mobile are organizations? How much are they stuck in an environment that worked at one point, but don't have the ability to evolve quickly into a currently changing environment? So
Yes.
as environments change rapidly and faster, if we continue, the organizations that understand how to create structures that are more fluid, roles that are more fluid, I mean, we all need to know what our work is, but that are more fluid. We talked about this idea, the difference between a specialist
Yes, and a versatilist.
And a versatilist.
Mhm.
And how we can have more people who are versatilists and can do 5 things versus 1.
Yes.
Those kind of companies will be the ones that survive. The ones who are like a whole series of specialists, stuck in the same pyramid they've been stuck in
Yes.
for 100 years, are not going to make it.
No
Work
chance,
for it.
no chance. You know, it's interesting because I think then for our HR practitioners in the audience today, a word about the discipline will have to change. You said something to me that was very revolutionary in its thinking, but it rung true. What if the metric for HR business partners, HR leaders was actually zero loss, closed loop,
Right.
right? And so if you have to recycle people out of your organization and not into other jobs, mind you, then it's actually considered a loss on the scorecard. And that is a different mindset from, this person isn't just a cost, it's an asset, which is not how we handle accounting, and we're probably not going to change that. But we can change the practice of workforce management to say, as we adapt, you know, both from a technical perspective and maybe a products and services perspective and process perspective, we're going to have a construct that assumes that adaptability of people. It's a very high wall to climb. It's a vertical climb maybe for our HR practitioners in the audience and for business leaders overall. But let's take maybe the last 60 seconds with your advice on how would you approach the wall? You talked about climbing before. I said I was getting vertigo. I'm revisiting it. So where do we start?
I love the concept of first principles design. So what's a problem we're attempting to solve? And then build your HR structure from there. Pretend like you don't have an HR team. Pretend like there's not even HR. Let's call it something. The H department. Whatever.
Pick another alphabet
Yeah,
letter.
so
Yes.
let's say we need to solve for this problem, which is we need to make sure that we have an agile workforce that is movable, that can respond with the time, that is a closed loop. And we're set up right now for how do you do to assess and understand how are you doing the job you're doing today really well. We're actually really good at that. That's a performance review, it's engagement survey, obviously
Sure.
we have massive technology to measure that. We're actually pretty good at the 9 box and succession planning and how do we do moving up and make sure we have development programs to make people move up in the thing. What we don't have and we haven't measured in the past is do we have an agile workforce? And we don't have the systems and structures to solve that problem. Do we measure workforce agility? Is there a single person in charge of agility? You have people in charge of development, you have people in charge of the performance process. But there doesn't exist a role currently in understanding like someone's agility index. Like how many other jobs are you adjacent to?
Yes.
How many jobs can you move to?
Yes.
How wide is your spectrum of opportunity in front of you? Not just one job, it's 10 jobs. And I did have this role in my time in Guild, and I turned to the person and I said, if things shift and we have to let go of one single person through no fault of their own because we didn't create an agile workforce, you and I are going to have a conversation.
Yes.
So, and I think if you know that those are the table stakes, it's like, how do you make sure you have a commitment to people to create and help them build agile skills that can move and shift no matter what direction the company's headed? by the way, the companies will, the ones that survive will do that.
Mhm.
And if you're gonna survive, the company has to do that, but you can't do that for your people too.
Yes, I love that, and that idea of the transparency of the progression and the pathways, which at a time where people are uncertain, helps them to see that you've planned ahead, and that brings in loyalty. So that is phenomenal. I can't wait to have you back on this podcast again, Dean. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us for the Workforce Intelligence Lab by Manpower Group podcast. We look forward to seeing you next time. Mackenzie, I need to record my intro again.